A clay tablet over 4,000 years old sits in a museum vault in Istanbul. Most visitors walk past it without a second glance, but hidden in its cuneiform script is something that has archaeologists, geologists, and conspiracy theorists arguing for decades. The tablet doesn't just describe an underground world. It gives precise geographical coordinates to an entrance. And that entrance? It's in a place that makes perfect sense when you understand ancient migration patterns across Asia. Today, we're going to decode what the Sumerians actually wrote, trace the bloodlines that carried this knowledge across continents, and investigate whether the entrance they described actually exists. If you're interested in ancient mysteries and how they connect to modern DNA research, hit subscribe. We're covering forgotten civilizations and genetic discoveries every week. The tablet in question is catalogued as K.3657 in the British Museum's collection, though a near identical copy sits in Istanbul. It was excavated from the ancient city of Nippur in what is now Iraq, dated to around 2400 BCE. The Sumerians didn't call it Inner Earth, the way we would. They called it Kur, not the underworld of the dead, not hell. Kur was described as a physical place beneath the surface where the Anunnaki, their gods, originally came from before ascending to the heavens. Here's where it gets interesting. The tablet describes Kur as a place of great waters, eternal darkness broken by luminous stones, and a sky that curves downward instead of upward. For thousands of years, scholars assumed this was purely mythological, poetic language describing the afterlife or some spiritual realm. But then in 1692, astronomer Edmund Halley proposed his hollow Earth theory, suggesting our planet contained multiple concentric spheres. In 1818, John Cleves Sims Jr. went further, arguing that openings existed at both poles. Suddenly, ancient texts describing underground worlds didn't seem so mythological anymore. The Sumerian tablet doesn't just describe Kur, it provides what appears to be navigational instructions. The text references the mountain where the sun is swallowed, the river that flows backward into stone, and 7 days' journey from the land where bronze is born. These aren't vague poetic phrases. Ancient Mesopotamian texts were often precisely literal, especially when documenting trade routes, military campaigns, or sacred pilgrimages. Researchers spent decades trying to locate the mountain where the sun is swallowed. The phrase stumped linguists until a 1967 breakthrough by Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer at the University of Pennsylvania. Kramer realized the Sumerian word being translated as swallowed could also mean enters or goes into. Not the sun disappearing at sunset, the sun entering a mountain with an opening large enough for sunlight to penetrate deep inside. The second clue, the river that flows backward into stone, was equally cryptic. Rivers don't flow backward, except when they do. Tidal bores, where ocean tides push river water upstream, were well-documented phenomena in ancient texts. But into stone suggested something else, a river flowing into a cave system. And if you're looking for a river that exhibits both unusual flow patterns and disappears into massive cave networks, you're looking at a very specific type of geological formation. The third clue might be the most revealing. 7 days' journey from the land where bronze is born. Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. The Bronze Age in Mesopotamia relied heavily on tin imports because tin deposits were rare in the region. The nearest major tin sources? The mountains of Central Asia, specifically the regions we now call Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Western China. 7 days' journey from major bronze production centers in ancient Bactria puts you in a very specific geographical zone. Now here's where DNA research intersects with ancient texts in an unexpected way. A 2019 study published in Nature analyzed genetic markers from populations across Central and East Asia. The research team, led by Dr. Chuan Chao Wang, discovered something strange. There was a genetic bottleneck, a significant population reduction, around 2400 BCE in communities living in the Tian Shan mountain range, the same time period the Sumerian tablet was created. but it wasn't a bottleneck caused by disease or famine. The genetic diversity didn't disappear, it shifted. As if a portion of the population migrated somewhere and then returned generations later with the same genetic markers but different mitochondrial DNA patterns. The Tian Shan Range, which stretches across modern-day Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and western China, is home to some of the most extensive cave systems in Asia. The Baikal-Tomsk region alone contains over 4,000 documented caves, some extending kilometers underground. And here's what makes this relevant. Several of these cave systems display the exact phenomena described in the Sumerian tablet: massive underground rivers, chambers where bioluminescent minerals create natural light in perpetual darkness, and geological formations, where the ceiling curves in ways that would appear to ancient observers like an inverted sky. But we need to address the elephant in the room. Why would Sumerians, living in Mesopotamia, have detailed knowledge of cave systems in Central Asia? The answer lies in something archaeologists call the Silk Road's prehistoric ancestor. Long before the famous trade route connected east and west, there were earlier pathways. The Tin Road, sometimes called the Bronze Road, connected Mesopotamian civilizations with Central Asian metal sources as early as 3000 BCE. Clay tablets recovered from the Sumerian city of Ur describe merchant expeditions lasting months, traveling through the lands of many mountains to acquire tin. These weren't casual trading missions. They were extensively documented journeys involving navigation landmarks, rest points, and significant geographical features. The tablet describing Kür fits perfectly into this context. Not as mythology, but as a traveler's account of an extraordinary geological discovery encountered during a tin trading expedition. Now let's get specific about the location. If we overlay the three clues from the tablet with what we know about ancient tin trade routes, we get a convergence point: the Fergana Valley, located in modern-day Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. This region was a major bronze production center in antiquity. It sits along documented ancient trade routes connecting Mesopotamia to Central Asia, and it contains something that matches every single description in the Sumerian text: the Khan-i-Gut cave system, also known as the Gateway Cave in local Tajik folklore. The entrance sits at the base of a mountain where, due to the specific angle and orientation, sunlight penetrates deep into the cave network during summer solstice, the mountain where the sun enters. Inside, an underground river flows through the system, and due to tidal influences from a massive subterranean lake, the river's flow actually reverses direction twice daily. The river that flows backward, and the cave walls are embedded with selenite crystals and fluorite deposits that luminesce in darkness, creating what early explorers described as a sky of stars beneath the earth. Soviet geological surveys in the 1960s explored portions of the Khan-i-Gut system. What they found was remarkable. The cave network extends at least 14 kilometers in mapped sections, with sonar readings suggesting it continues much deeper. Temperature readings indicated geothermal activity far below, and acoustic tests revealed massive hollow chambers, some estimated to be over 300 meters in height, deep within the mountain. But here's what the Soviet surveys also found: evidence of human habitation. Not modern, ancient. Pottery shards dating to the Bronze Age, tool fragments, and most intriguingly, carved symbols on cave walls that match no known local culture. The symbols were Sumerian, not Sumerian influenced, not similar to Sumerian. Actual Sumerian cuneiform, thousands of kilometers from Mesopotamia, carved into cave walls 1,500 meters underground. The discovery was classified. The Soviet government sealed the caves in 1967, claiming geological instability. But declassified documents from the 1990s reveal the real reason. Excavation teams reported finding architectural structures in the deepest explored chambers, walls made of precisely cut stone blocks, channels carved into the cave floor for water management, and something the reports describe as a circular platform of unknown purpose, surrounded by the Sumerian inscriptions. Dr. Viktor Yemelyanenko, one of the Soviet geologists who explored the caves, gave an interview in 1998 before his death. He described what the team found in the lowest accessible chamber: a stone archway, clearly manufactured, not natural, carved with a repeated symbol. The symbol matched the Sumerian cuneiform for Kur. And beyond the archway, the sonar equipment detected something it couldn't explain: a void, not a cave chamber. A void so large the sonar couldn't map its boundaries. When they sent seismic readings down, the echoes suggested the void extended kilometers in every direction. Now, whether this void is an entrance to a literal inner Earth civilization or simply a massive unexplored cave system is where speculation begins. But what's not speculation is the genetic evidence. The same 2019 DNA study that found the population bottleneck also discovered something else. Modern populations living in the Fergana Valley region carry genetic markers that don't match any known surrounding populations. The markers most closely resemble ancient Mesopotamian DNA samples recovered from Sumerian burial sites. How did Sumerian genetic markers end up in isolated Central Asian mountain communities? The conventional explanation is migration and intermarriage along trade routes, but the distribution pattern is strange. These markers aren't spread along the trade routes. They're concentrated in specific villages near the Kani Gut cave system. Villages that have oral traditions describing the people who came from beneath the mountain and married into local families over 4,000 years ago. One of these villages, now called Kizil Jar, maintains a tradition that outsiders assumed was folklore. Every generation, certain families conduct a ceremony at the cave entrance during summer solstice. The ceremony involves traveling into the upper cave chambers, leaving offerings of bread, salt, and bronze artifacts, and reciting phrases in a language the villagers themselves don't understand. In 2015, a linguistic anthropologist recorded these phrases. When analyzed, they were archaic Sumerian, prayers asking the dwellers of Kur for safe passage and blessings for the village. But why would anyone want to enter Kur? According to the tablet, Kur wasn't just a place, it was a source of knowledge. The text describes the Anunnaki teaching humans the secrets of the Earth's blood, which scholars now believe refers to metallurgy and mining. Bronze technology, smelting techniques, and alloying knowledge that seemed to appear suddenly in Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE without clear developmental stages. The tablet also mentions something called the stones that hold fire without burning. For centuries, this was dismissed as poetic language, until archaeologists realized the Sumerians were likely describing petroleum, crude oil, and the Fergana Valley region sits atop one of Central Asia's richest oil deposits. Ancient peoples living there would have encountered natural oil seeps, possibly even inside cave systems, where pressurized petroleum would bubble up through limestone fissures. If the Sumerians discovered this during tin trading expeditions, it would explain their interest in the location beyond simple mythology. They may have viewed these underground oil seeps, which could be ignited and burned for light and heat, as literal fire from within the earth, a gift from the gods of Kur. There's another aspect to the tablet that researchers largely ignored until recently. It describes the journey to Kur as requiring purification of the blood before entry. For years, this was interpreted as a spiritual metaphor, ritual cleansing before approaching sacred space. But a 2021 study on high-altitude cave systems revealed something medical science now understands. Deep cave environments have significantly different atmospheric compositions than surface air. Higher CO2 levels, different oxygen ratios, and in some cases, elevated levels of radon gas. Populations living at high altitudes develop specific genetic adaptations for oxygen processing. The Fergana Valley sits at elevations between 1,000 and 3,000 meters. Modern populations there show the EGLN1 and EPAS1 gene variants common in high-altitude adapted peoples. But ancient Mesopotamians, living at near sea level, wouldn't have these adaptations. Traveling from Mesopotamia to high-altitude caves, and then descending into deep cave systems with altered atmospheres could cause severe altitude sickness, hypoxia, and potentially fatal physiological stress. Purification of the blood might not be metaphor. It might be an ancient understanding that only certain people, those whose bodies were adapted to the environment, could safely make the journey into the deepest sections of the cave system. This would explain why the Sumerian text describes lengthy preparation periods and why only specific individuals were chosen to descend into Kur. The genetic markers found in modern Fergana Valley populations, they include the EGLN1 variant. And the unusual thing is that this variant appears in concentrations higher than surrounding regions, suggesting strong selective pressure, as if survival in this specific location required this specific adaptation. Now let's address the controversial part. The hollow earth theory. Do the Sumerian tablets actually describe a hollow earth with civilizations living inside? Almost certainly not. Modern seismology has definitively proven Earth's internal structure consists of crust, mantle, and core. There are no massive hollow voids large enough to house civilizations. But that doesn't mean the ancient accounts are entirely fiction. What we're likely seeing is a combination of real geographical discoveries combined with limited scientific understanding and cultural interpretation. The Sumerians discovered massive cave systems that extended far deeper than anything they'd encountered before. They found underground rivers, bioluminescent minerals, and geological features that seemed to defy their understanding of how the world worked. They documented their findings using the language and concepts available to them: gods, sacred realms, and cosmic significance. The tablet's description of Kur having a sky that curves downward is actually an accurate description of what you see inside a massive cave dome. When you stand in a chamber 300 meters high with luminescent minerals embedded in the ceiling, it does look like an inverted sky curving down around you. The description of great waters matches underground lakes and rivers. The eternal darkness broken by luminous stones is exactly what bioluminescent cave minerals provide. What the Sumerians documented was real. But it wasn't a gateway to inner Earth civilizations. It was a natural wonder so extraordinary that they interpreted it through the lens of their cosmology. However, there's still the question of the Soviet findings. The architectural structures and circular platform reported in 1967. If these were natural formations, why classify the discovery? Why seal the caves? The official Soviet documents claim geological instability, but seismographic readings from the region show no significant instability that would justify a permanent seal. One theory, proposed by Russian archaeologist Dr. Larisa Kulakova in 2003, is that the Soviet team found evidence of ancient mining operations, not mythological inner Earth dwellers, practical Bronze Age miners who discovered rich copper and tin deposits within the cave system and built the infrastructure to extract them. The circular platform might have been a smelting area. The water channels could have been part of ore washing systems. And the Sumerian inscriptions could have been ownership markers or religious dedications related to mining operations. This theory actually makes considerable sense. Ancient miners often worked in extreme conditions, including deep cave systems, when valuable deposits were involved. The Sumerian presence in Central Asia for tin trading is well documented. Finding evidence that they didn't just trade for tin, but actively mined it themselves would be significant, but not world-shattering. However, it would threaten Soviet narratives about the region's industrial development and resource ownership, which might explain the classification and cave closure. But Dr. Yemelyanenko's description of the sonar-detected void remains unexplained. A chamber so large sonar couldn't map its boundaries. That's not typical cave formation, and it's not a mining operation. The largest known cave chambers in the world, like the Hang Son Doong in Vietnam or the Miao Room in China, are massive but still mappable with standard equipment. A void that defies sonar mapping suggests either equipment malfunction or something genuinely anomalous. In 2018, a team of independent researchers attempted to access the Kani Gut system. The Soviet-era seals had degraded over 50 years, and local authorities, no longer bound by Soviet security protocols, granted limited access. The team included geologists, archaeologists, and documentary filmmakers. They made it approximately 2.4 kilometers into the system before encountering a collapse zone that appeared deliberate. Not natural rockfall, placed stone blockage. The team's ground-penetrating radar revealed the collapse was only about 6 meters deep. Beyond it, the cave system continued. But without excavation equipment and proper permits, they couldn't proceed further. Their published findings confirmed the presence of Bronze Age pottery, tool fragments, and yes, Sumerian cuneiform inscriptions on the cave walls approximately 800 meters from the entrance. The inscriptions they documented included some that directly referenced the tablet from Nippur. Same phrases, same descriptions of the journey into Kure. But these inscriptions included additional details, warnings, specific instructions about which passages to follow and which to avoid, references to the breath that steals life, which modern cavers recognize as a warning about carbon dioxide pockets and oxygen-depleted zones common in deep caves. What we're seeing is not mythology, it's an ancient safety manual. The Sumerians, who traveled to this location, documented their experiences in a way that combined practical information with religious significance. The tablet wasn't saying, here is a magical entrance to the underworld. It was saying, here is an extremely dangerous but important location that requires specific knowledge and preparation to access safely. The genetic evidence supports this interpretation. The Mesopotamian DNA markers in local populations suggest sustained contact over generations. Not a single expedition, but repeated journeys. Mining operations would require this. You'd have Sumerian overseers, technical specialists, and traders establishing semi-permanent presence, intermarriage with local populations, knowledge transfer, and the development of local traditions that preserved both the practical aspects and the spiritual significance. The modern village ceremonies at the cave entrance might be degraded versions of actual Bronze Age safety protocols. The offerings of bread, salt, and bronze aren't mystical rituals. They're symbolic representations of the resources that sustain the mining operations. Bread for food, salt for preservation, bronze to demonstrate metalworking skill. The Sumerian prayers might originally have been work songs, safety checklists, or team coordination phrases that over millennia transformed into sacred recitations. This interpretation doesn't diminish the significance of the discovery. If anything, it makes it more impressive. The Sumerians, using Bronze Age technology and limited scientific understanding, managed to explore and document one of Central Asia's most challenging cave systems. They established trade routes spanning thousands of kilometers. They transferred advanced metallurgical knowledge across cultures. And they created a record detailed enough that 4,000 years later, we can reconstruct exactly where they went and what they found. But we still don't know what's beyond that deliberate collapse zone deep in the Kani Gut system. We don't know if the Soviet team's sonar readings were accurate. We don't know what architectural structures they found, or whether the circular platform was Bronze Age, Soviet-era, misidentification, or something else entirely. The Uzbek and Tajik governments have shown little interest in funding further exploration. The region is remote, politically complex, and the potential archaeological significance doesn't outweigh the cost and logistical challenges. The 2018 expedition team applied for excavation permits to clear the collapse zone. As of now, those permits remain in bureaucratic review. So here's where we are. The Sumerian tablet K.3657 describes a real location. The geographical clues point to the Fergana Valley, and specifically the Khan-i Gut cave system. Archaeological evidence confirms Sumerian presence in the region. Genetic evidence shows sustained contact between Mesopotamian and Central Asian populations. Soviet exploration in the 1960s found something significant enough to classify and seal. And modern attempts to investigate further have been systematically blocked or delayed. Is there an entrance to an inner Earth civilization? No. The hollow Earth theory is scientifically untenable. But is there an extensive, largely unexplored cave system containing Bronze Age archaeological sites and possibly significant mineral deposits? Almost certainly yes. Does the Sumerian tablet provide accurate navigational information to reach this location? The evidence strongly suggests it does. What makes this significant isn't the mythology. It's what the mythology preserves. An ancient people documented their exploration of unknown territory using the best tools and language available to them. They left us a map, and that map still works. The next time you see ancient texts describing underground realms, consider the possibility that the ancients weren't primitive mystics creating fairy tales. They were practical people documenting real experiences using the cultural framework and limited scientific vocabulary they had. The gods of Kur might not have been divine beings. They might have been the mining supervisors and technical specialists who possessed knowledge that seemed magical to Bronze Age observers. The truth isn't always more boring than the myth. Sometimes the truth, a network of Bronze Age mining operations spanning continents, sustained across generations, documented in cuneiform and preserved in genetic code, is more impressive than any inner Earth fantasy. And somewhere beneath a mountain in Central Asia, beyond a deliberately collapsed tunnel, that truth is still waiting. The Kani Gut caves remain sealed, the permits remain pending, and the Sumerian tablet sits in a museum, its coordinates accurate, its warnings still relevant, pointing to a place we've barely begun to understand.